Climate change, a change in the usual weather found in a place. This can be a change in the rain or a change in the temperature. The main contributors to climate change are from human activities. These activities emit different greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases. We would assume that the overall emission of these greenhouse gases would come from cars, trucks, and power plants. But our consumption of meat is actually the leading cause. When you add up all their effects and byproducts, animal agriculture accounts for about half of all global emissions. To first start off, we must look at these dangerous gases that come from raising livestock. There are over 1.5 billion cows on Earth, and each cow emits 65 gallons of methane a day just by digesting their food. Nowadays, cows are fed a grain diet for all their meals, but when cows digest this grain, they become bloated, therefore creating gas because they are in reality built to digest grass, not grain. This methane gas has 21 times more climate changing power than CO2. In the future, energy emissions are predicted to rise by 20% by the year 2040, but agriculture emissions are predicted to rise by 80% by the year 2050. Just a single quarter-pound burger equals out to be 6.5 pounds of greenhouse gases. This can add up quickly because the average American eats 3 burgers per week. So this amounts to be 158 million tons of greenhouse gases created per year. This is equivalent to 45 coal-fired power plants. So why don't we just switch to all grass-fed beef to get away from this problem? Well, if we calculate what it would take to make this work, it doesn't sound logical. We would need 3.7 billion acres to accommodate for just Americans' average intake of meat. Unfortunately, we only have a little over 1.9 billion acres of land in the U.S. But half of the U.S. is already being used to grow food for agribusiness. But if we switch to grass-fed beef for just America alone, it would require us to turn every inch of land in the U.S. and Central America and parts of Canada and South America into grass pastures. This is not logical because we would have to convert mountain ranges, national parks, and major cities into grazing pastures. The difference between grass-fed and grain-fed is the amount of time it takes the animal to grow to be the optimal size to be slaughtered. The difference is 8 months, meaning this is an additional 8 months of water use, land use, feed, and waste. In other words, grass-fed meat is unsustainable in the world we live in today. Some of you might argue that this gas in turn means manure to provide nutrients to our crops, but many of you don't know how toxic it actually is. Farm cows in the U.S. alone produce 116,000 pounds of fecal matter per second. This is enough waste per year to cover all of San Francisco, New York City, Tokyo, Paris, New Delhi, Berlin, Hong Kong, London, Rio de Janeiro, Delaware, Bali, Costa Rica, and Denmark combined. But this cow manure contains nitrous oxide, which has 300 times the global warming effects as CO2. Unfortunately, all this waste is dumped into our oceans and waters and takes all the oxygen out of the water, which ends up creating dead zones, which we currently have over 500 in the world. If we don't do anything for this toxic runoff, then it is predicted that we will see fishless oceans by the year 2048. So any discussion about loss of life in oceans has to begin with a conversation about land-based animal agriculture. Of course, to get to this point, we have to be able to raise a calf into a 400-pound cow, and this takes a lot of water. For example, meat and dairy products are incredibly water-intensive because they are fed water-intensive grains. A single quarter-pounder takes about 660 gallons of water. These 660 gallons equals to be about the same amount of water as showering for 2 entire months. Many people blame water usage problems on domestic use, but in reality, domestic use only takes up 5% of usage compared to animal agriculture. That takes up 55%. We cannot blame the cows, though. We must blame ourselves for creating such a system to mass-produce beef and cow products. In comparison, dairy cows use over 1,000 gallons of water to produce just 1 gallon of milk. How is this sustainable? Almost 1/3 of America's land is becoming desert, and a vast majority of this is caused by livestock grazing. This dairy coming from cows isn't good for us either. Cow's milk is meant to turn a 65-pound calf into a 400-pound cow as quickly as possible. In other words, it can be described as a baby calf growth fluid. All the hormones, lipids, proteins, sodium, growth factors, and IGF are meant to blow up a calf into a cow. When humans consume it, it stimulates their tissues. They get lumps in their breasts, which leads into getting mammograms in women and many other examples. When we don't We don't pay for all these costs when we check out at McDonald's with a burger. We pay for them later in life, whether it be through our healthcare bills, water for feeding cows, or greenhouse gases. Another factor that is taken advantage of by mass producing beef and dairy products is the loss of our rainforests. Growing food for our world's cow population will eventually push greenhouse gas emissions over their allowable threshold unless we humans do something. When we think about growing food for livestock, raising livestock, and creating space for a slaughterhouse, it all comes down to deforestation. About 1 acre of rainforest is being cut down per second, and 91% of this deforestation is due to raising livestock. When people are decimating the trees in the rainforest, there is collateral damage that comes along with it. An example of this is that we are losing over 100 plant and animal insect species every day. According to the Rainforest Action Network, the leading cause of deforestation is because of human intervention, and a lot of this human intervention is for livestock. Livestock and their feed are responsible for 136 million square miles of deforestation. In a statement made by the program director of Amazon Watch, she stated that the Amazon rainforest itself could be gone in a matter of the next 10 years. So, as humans, what can we do to fix this growing problem? We can eat less meat. We have to realize that every acre of land we are given a choice to either produce 25,000 pounds of fruit and vegetables or 250 pounds of meat. To better use our available resources, we have to realize raising livestock is the main cause of species extinction, ocean dead zones, air pollution, habitat destruction, and climate change. Renewable energy is a good idea, but it will take at least 20 years to make a change and will cost more than $18 trillion to develop. But if we stop our consumption of meat, it will start showing effects today rather than 20 years later. By decreasing your meat consumption, it doesn't mean you have to become vegetarian or vegan, but just by cutting out beef, it saves 1.4 tons of CO2 emissions per year per person, which is the same as driving a hybrid vehicle. Every day, you are given a choice to save over 1,100 gallons of water, 45 pounds of grain, 30 square feet of forest, 10 pounds of CO2, and one animal's life. By doing so, we can have a huge impact on our overall health and the health of the planet. Just remember, you can change the world, you just have to choose to do it.